So, welcome to the Let's Talk Digital Marketing podcast. And today's special guest is Emir, and is it pronounced Zecovic? Have I got that right?
Yeah, almost there, but pretty much, yeah. Good one on the first try.
Yes, thank you. And so you specialize, you certainly specialize in business to business marketing strategies,
Yeah.
and you have a background in SEO as well.
Yeah. For
Well,
about 8 years now.
yeah. And you're from Macedonia originally.
Yes. Born, raised. I think that sums it up.
And obviously, you were in the UK for a bit because you were
Uh, yes
university
and
student.
no, because I did get my master's from Sheffield, but they have an international, how do you call it? International faculty in Greece and Bulgaria.
Yeah, yeah,
So yeah, you can go anywhere pretty much, but I went to both of those places. So yeah, I mean it's the master's is from the University of Sheffield, but uh, they have I don't even know how they call it, international faculty presence in another country. I guess is the right way of putting it.
yes. And you're the CMO for a company at the moment.
Yes, I'm CMO currently of two companies. I provide consultancies for few others. I'm CMO of 12 Minute, which is a B2C, and of TextGrid, which is a B2B communication API software that provides services mostly to mid-size level business, which is uh, in the communication sphere. Anything from SMS API, voice, email, pretty much bulk messaging that's very difficult to, not difficult, impossible to cover through normal CRMs or any kind of other service. So it's pretty much all big companies have to use something of the kind. For example, as far as I know that Airbnb and Booking use Twilio, which is our main competitor, because they send millions upon millions of messages per day. So in order to cover that wide range of customers and users, you need to rely on an API software. Otherwise, it would not be possible.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And on this, as I say, I said before on this podcast, we have a lot of business to business listeners and viewers. So it'd be great to learn about business to business marketing, uh, business to business marketing strategies. Um, what would you say that? A lot of businesses I know, uh, LinkedIn is usually their business to business strategy,
Hmm.
um,
Yes.
and that is sometimes it. Um,
Uh,
I'd imagine you would say there's a lot
yeah.
more to it than that.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, uh, when discussed strategy, I think the first thing, and this is like a bit of a cliche, but it's definitely the first thing that should be discussed is the resources, because usually when a company starts small and there's limited resources, especially in the human element, and of course money wise, is that usually what companies regard as marketing is that just go for the good old cold outreach. And the problem is that generally it creates results in the short term, and actually it's always the case. So another good side is that you can just, I don't know, find a company like Cognizant, just buy a bunch of leads that are likely to be interested in whatever you are pitching, and then pretty much just do your outreach, create a strategy, do your outreach, which is nothing wrong with it. The problem ends when that just dries out, and it always dries out. That's the problem. You cannot scale it at some point. Uh, I mean, I've always looked at outreach as an additional strategy, something that can help you, of course, but I would never regard it as the primary one. Uh, in a way, I mean, if you ask me, any business that's just starting and needs to make sure that whatever they're selling, especially if they haven't passed that MVP phase, to make sure that they have a product market fit, probably going for cold outreach or pretty much reaching out on LinkedIn or via email is the best way to go, just to understand what's happening with the model, especially those first few months where you have retention problems. So it's like all over the place. I mean, you just cannot. I mean, the amount of problems is just horrifying. Uh, but after that, it definitely creates a problem, especially after a year that it's just not scalable anymore. Uh, it just dies out naturally,
Mm.
or you just hit a ceiling and there's nowhere to go apart from that.
Yeah.
So that's usually what happens. And I'm not against it. I've never said that I don't think it's a good strategy. I think it's an excellent strategy to validate something. But it hits a ceiling at certain, like it hits maturity very early, and it does not have that snowball effect that other strategies do. It doesn't have that domino effect where, at the beginning it's a bit more difficult, but then the results are like have a compounding interest over time, especially after a year or 2 years. Um,
Yes.
so
How do you scale uh, a B2B outreach campaign?
well, first the scaling, I mean, immediately comes from how narrow or not so narrow the prospecting is. And I mean, I've known many cases where it's just simply like if a business has multiple product lines or product divisions, the prospecting seems much easier to scale. So uh, of course, everybody starts from defining let's say, the ideal lead or the ideal persona that's likely, I'm saying likely to become a client, or maybe perhaps just outreach to companies that are already using some of your direct competitors. Uh, and usually, how, from my experience, how usually the scaling thing goes is that because you cannot just find new people out of nowhere, you cannot just invent them from thin air. Is that you just like expand the persona a little bit. So usually you start narrow, you just get those what do you say, low hanging fruits, and then
Mm.
all of a sudden you are kind of drying out, and then you just expand and expand. The problem is that the conversion rate drops as a trade-off to that, and by conversion rate I mean from the prospecting phase to perhaps going into a call. So it depends. I mean, everybody has their own sales cycle, but the most common one is from the prospecting to the lead gen, and then we have a call, the negotiation, and so on. It tends to drop. So the scaling becomes, I would say, it's more like flatline after that point. I mean, I usually see that it flatlines. It's hard to scale. It's possible, but challenging. So one of the ways that I've seen, and I've consulted with some of the other companies that I work with, is that they create a completely different persona. So someone that's not part of the same pitch. For example, uh, for 12 Min, for example, when we were doing, for 12 Min is a B2C company, but we're talking also about creating a B2B department. So, for example, I can just elaborate on this. So, some of our competitors are actually reaching out to the big companies, MasterCard, I don't know, Sony, and so on. So, what they're offering is pretty much a book learning and a course learning service for their employees at 20% of the usual rate that we would sell in the B2C sphere. So let's say 10,000 subscriptions, 15,000 subscriptions, 20,000 subscriptions. And this whole thing, that how they scaled it, is pretty much that they created a whole new persona that they didn't have before, which is pretty much if you're in B2C, for example, you don't worry about it. But as soon as you go into B2B, once you hit a wall, you have one of two options. You either expand your, let's say, ideal clientele, or you just create a completely new one. And that's just keeps going. And then my always, what I found is that almost always at some point between 1 and 2 years, it just hits like either a flat line or hits a wall. And then you need alternative channels.
Yeah. That's interesting. So you start off with a buyer persona, and then to scale, you would then be more specific with that buyer persona as the
At the, yeah, at the outset, absolutely. Because at the outset, if we're talking about a company that's just being created recently or does not have exactly some very stable revenue stream, that going as specific as possible is the best way to either validate or invalidate something.
yeah
But usually that means that you have a very narrow list that probably within a few months, especially in B2B, you're going to hit that you've outreached everybody. So now you're faced with what now? And in the what now phase, and especially if the company is not ready to expand to new markets or it's not ready to burn money, the only option is either expand the persona, so make it a little less specific, or create a completely new one that would cover new attributes of that persona, or completely a new product line, which is, for example, in our case, is SMS API, for example, is the most popular one because, I mean, everybody needs it, from dental appointments to, I don't know, plumbers, or you name it.
yeah yeah
Maybe you need a reminder or something. Now, email APIs are still important, but it's not as big of a target market, but it's a completely different persona. That who would you target? Like, for example, yes, you can get an email appointment reminder on your inbox, but it's not going to create that impact compared to an SMS. So it's a completely new persona that if you try to sell, let's say, the email API, you cannot go with the same persona or the same ideal persona or the same ideal customer or profile. Um, so that would give you big expansion in that outreach. So I would say that I consider those two options as, in my opinion, the good place to start scaling, especially if they hit like a wall. In what do they do now?
yeah yeah. That's interesting. That's interesting. I've never heard that before. Um, so obviously the buyer persona is vital for your messages to communicate to whoever you're targeting.
Yep. And
I-
I
Is
was
that the
gonna say,
key? Yeah, sure.
yeah, actually it is because, for example, I'm sure you know, since you're an SEO expert, I'm sure you know Brian Dean from Backlinko,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
is the god of SEO, kind of. I mean, I don't want to sound biased, not like I'm giving him free publicity, but he even created something called the CVP, and it's called Customer Value Persona. And actually, everybody who has time should check it out. It's very interesting. So Brian Dean, unlike most of the others, let's say copywriters or marketeers, claims that focusing on a persona as in attribute, so whether there's a man or a woman, a 30-year-old, 40-year-old, does not necessarily matter as much as their values matter. So what he does is that he doesn't even create an avatar, and and he mostly targets people who have similar values. So in his case, probably it's going to be young entrepreneurs, or uh, people that are highly ambitious, career driven, and that sense doesn't necessarily matter whether they have the role of CEO, CTO, whether they're man, woman, whether they're 25 or 31. And that also expands a little bit the base that you can pitch to, especially in B2B. Because if you're targeting values and not attributes, it also expands a little bit. Because why wouldn't you target, let's say, a 55-year-old who has similar ambitions to 25-year-old, just because it doesn't fit an avatar of specific attributes that you subjectively created, right? So
yeah,
as long as the values match, the content will match the user. It doesn't necessarily matter that much.
yeah.
Um,
That is so true. That is so true. And when you're doing cold outreach, um, like if the outreach falls on deaf ears and doesn't get a response, uh, do you what do you do next? Do you try again
Well,
or just leave it, try someone else?
yeah. Well, I would say that even though I'm primarily involved in marketing rather than in sales, I also help the sales team create this strategy. So what we did actually, and what I generally advise and what we tried and tested it to work is that first of all, we thought was the less intrusive way to reach out and actually reach back to someone. So we thought probably email. And after some testing, I realized that 7 days after not getting a response has the highest percentage of a reply. Now, someone else might have a different data. I'm just talking from what I've seen with my own eyes.
Sure.
Um, Probably there's someone who did a study, industry-based study. I'm sure. In my just experience, reaching back via email and has a very high reply rates if it happens after a week. Now, the question that we that that I got asked on a few times is should we do a cold call? Should we maybe be a little bit more pushing? What do we say? And so on. In my opinion, after 7 days, an email has the highest return on investment. And I don't mean just monetary, I mean even in time and value. And it's easy to create a sequence actually. Especially actually on any CRM, you can create a simple sequence. Uh, and honestly, what I also notice is what we do in this sequence is that, uh, I mean, the obvious way is that you go with the general template, send out some short copy and explain why maybe you can kind of get them back in the loop. But then what I noticed that works much better than that is that you completely forget about sequences, go to their website and do a thorough research for like an hour. So what I would generally do is that, of course, by that time we all know the pain points of them, like the general ones, but everybody has some specific ones. If you nail that in the email or come close to nailing them, which is hard because not like anyone's going to provide you with inside information from the company. Maybe they did it on the initial call, which is then you can consider yourself lucky, but sometimes they don't.
Mm.
What I would advise is that if we don't have any information, we just go with the generic sequence, trying to understand where it went off. But if you have solid information, and usually you can find it on the web, just going through it, you'll find and mentioning that in the pitch, I would say it works pretty well. Uh, Nobody likes robotic messages. I mean, it's like a rule of thumb. Nobody likes what you would send to everybody else. So I know we use that term, personalize the messages get on a call and then personalize the pitch, but you cannot personalize unless you understand what the problem is from their perspective.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm for that. I have 7 days and 21 days afterwards as the final one. Because on the flip side and as a trade-off, I also don't want to be flagged as spam because it's really hard to get out of. So it's be very careful. And after that, if there is no reply, just backlog the customer, try to reach out at a further notice. Now, as I said, I'm sure, and I have friends who use different approaches. I know. From what I saw, usually what tends to have the best success is that as personalized as possible after 7 days of silence.
Yeah.
That's in primary channel email. And yeah, and I forgot no weekends and no Monday. And the best day is after a person has read their morning email. So I would say afternoon between 12 and 4 p.m. is generally where their inbox is empty between Tuesday and Thursday. And I can give you even some information. When we did some experiments for 12 men, this was B2C, but just to explain to you how hitting the right timing creates miracles in a way. We were sending the same email, including Saturdays, Sundays, Mondays, you name it. It was one email. You become a lead, you send you the email. We flip that so that the email is only sent from Tuesday to Thursday, actually from 12 to 4 p.m. And if you sign up on a Friday, for example, or Saturday or Sunday, you don't get the email till Tuesday. So that was the rule. The open rates went from 11 to 23%, and sales almost doubled. Well, we changed nothing in the email, like nothing. It was exactly the same email.
But Tuesday to Friday.
No, Tuesday to Thursday. Friday, nobody likes
Thursday, sorry.
receiving emails.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes this doesn't work. If someone has an appointment, for example, like you cannot say, well, I'm going to send you a reminder on Saturday while your appointment is on Friday. So of course it's subjective in a way, but I'm saying if we have the luxury to choose, which most of us do, uh, don't send them early in the morning, ignore weekends and ignore Monday. Now, I would ignore also Fridays, if you ask me. I mean, though there's nothing worse than sending a sales email or a reminder on a Friday.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's true. That's certainly true from my experience too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But for me, like, I don't even read them, to be honest. It's like on default subconscious mode. You just not like just delete them or not even pay attention.
And there are AI powered B2B marketing tools. I don't know whether you've experimented with them, or do you have any opinions on that, on using
Well,
AI for your B2B marketing?
are you referring to mostly the copywriting thing or just optimization overall?
Uh, Copywriting, uh, optimization too.
Well, I would say in terms of copywriting, almost all CRMs have some form of AI right now. So anything from messaging, from subject lines, I think almost all of the big ones have it right now. So even if you don't want to experiment, you're kind of forced to.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you noticed that even if you run ads, even Facebook now has an advantage AI option, which they did not have till recently.
Mm.
So you have the social media platforms, you have all of the CRMs have it. Almost all of the big ones have it actually. In terms of optimization, to be honest, I still prefer to use Monday or uh, automation. And if something cannot be automated there, or you need like a zip, maybe Zapier or something, I've not. Yeah, I think there is one good advice that I've heard also. Is said that don't get involved in shiny object syndrome, which is like everything that's new is going to magically improve something, and it's generally not the case. So, for example, um, we tested uh, a subject line that was AI generated with some high chances of working, let's say, versus what we thought would speak to the user or the client in this way. And like 9 out of 10 times, the human generated one actually performed better. Um, and again, I'm saying I'm aware that it's subjective, but I don't believe that the AI tools will somehow magically improve everything. They're like a pan. Like if you don't know how to cook, even the best pan and knives won't help you.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense a little bit. It's a stupid example, but yeah,
You
I'm
should
not
check it
proud of it.
publishing to make sure that
Yes,
AI is, is
and
communicating.
let's not forget, we don't know how, and especially true for SEO. We don't know when, how, or why. We, I mean, Google can probably at some point change their algorithm and pretty much ban all AI content. We don't know that. I mean, they can do that. Even right now, they don't like it as much. Now they cannot kind of identify it 100%, but it's possible that that could have serious ramifications in the future.
Mm.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. I think that is a concern. That is a concern.
yeah, and I think when I was reading the latest Google update, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what I read is that they are not in favor because it doesn't follow the expertise or authority and blah, blah, blah formula, especially if it's AI generated. And if that's true for the search engines, it might be true for the social media platforms and perhaps could be true for email. Now, if let's say the search engine generates uh, AI generated copy or something, it may, I don't know, reduce deliverability rate. And
Yes.
it's all going in that direction that at some point it may happen.
Yes. Yeah. I think you're right on that. And would you, I mean, apart from the buyer persona, if you're targeting particular or promoting particular products or services, for example, if you're promoting a SaaS product,
Mhm.
is there any significant difference when you're promoting, say, a SaaS product, which I think you have experience with promoting a service or a consultancy type of service?
Not primarily. I mean, at the end, it all comes down to the same thing. You have to define the values, the tone of voice, and the wants. And once you have that, you have what is called customer value persona. That's based on values, not like an avatar, not based on like some superficial attributes. And from that point onwards, that dictates the marketing strategy. So it's kind of like a pyramid top down approach, where first you have the value profile, and whether you are I think whether you are doing, I don't know, consultancy, SaaS, or I don't know, you have some small business, um, there are some particular values that you can extract that makes the most sense and that you need to speak to. I mean, I remember reading that for example, there's an interesting experiment. Like, for example, we have I told you about the app, and if you go just to the Play Store or App Store, and if you just read the reviews, let's say of users, especially those that aren't happy, we have 4.8 rating currently on App Store, but there are some that are not happy, of course. But I'm saying, if you read them and if you take that copy and if you incorporate it into your sales pitch, and that's true for B2B as well, whatever they're disliking, you use their language and spin it off, create a positive. From my experience, created amazing, amazing, amazing results. And one example was that is that we changed our headline, and that's currently available on the website, from something that was kind of generic to a promise. That how we came up with the promise. We read in the Play Store reviews that people were expecting that. They were saying, well, I cannot get this from this app. And we noticed that pattern appearing all over. So we use those exact words in the copy as a promise, in a way, in the first headline, to just increase leads from like 20% to 33%
Wow. Wow.
landing page to you. So the value persona is just that. You need to know what language do they speak, and whether that's a sales call or a copy, you use their language pretty much after you know the values and pain point, but you use exactly their language as much as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a killer strategy. Definitely using reviews from, from Google Play Store,
Google or Google Business
Google
Profiles.
reviews. Yeah. Yeah.
It's amazing because they're telling you exactly what they want you to write about. And I mean, for our case, like if you have 80,000 reviews, is much easier than if you are B2B, because you have a Google Business Profile and maybe you have 50 reviews or 100 reviews, but it's still enough that you can use a tool and identify most commonly used words. For example, that's what I do. So like or even you can create an Excel formula for that. So you can say, well, I mean, I'm not talking about some irrelevant words. I mean, like adjectives or I don't know, nouns or something like that. And you can say, well, this was used the most. This was used the most. And then you have like a pattern, and then you need to sell that promise. What I call is front load the value, like immediately say the value based on what's likely the biggest problem. And you can find the biggest problem. The other way to go about this is just to go on forums. Like you have a thread, see what people are complaining about. Do a quantitative analysis, meaning that you can find like a repetition of words.
Yeah.
Because you cannot analyze every review one by one, but you can find like a repetition of words. You can scrape the web. You can say, well, most of the time, this is what they're concerned about. And then you get like just throw the copy inside of that. Like just, for example, I don't know if you know this, but Brian Dean's course, which is the best SEO course in the world, it's called SEO That Works. Because when he was reading the forums, everybody was saying, I need to find strategies that work, or SEO strategies that work. And
Yeah.
it had like a repetitive theme all over the place. Like he would check his comments and forums, and everybody was saying, well, I tried these strategies, they don't work. So the they don't work became his domain name, SEO That Works. It's kind of funny, but it's the best selling SEO course on the planet for a reason.
Yeah. Yeah. And does paid ads have any part in this?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I always use paid ads in the early stages because you don't have traffic. It takes a year for some good SEO results, roughly. So what I would here's my approach. I would go first and fix the tracking. Now that's imperative. Any problems with the tracking is just awful,
Yeah.
and there are always some. So first fix the tracking, then find commercial intent keywords, especially if it's a local SEO business. I think they're very easy to find. For SaaS, it's a bit more complicated, but SEMrush pretty much you can filter out by commercial intent. And then what I would generally go after, I would not worry about the CPCs that I would, and this is somehow maybe a bit unpopular, but this is something that I would wholeheartedly advise is that you don't try to create a new conversion rate approach. So what does it mean? Don't try a new one. Just take the one from your top competitor and copy it. And then on top of that baseline, start your experimentation. If you try it from zero, the amount of money you're going to waste reaching that same level of result is just too costly, especially if money is an issue in the early stages. Um, so for example, if someone has a model that says click here and book your appointment, and you have call us, and if I would immediately change to book an appointment and use that as a baseline, and then maybe you can A/B it with the call us first approach and use paid ads to drive traffic. Why will I say that? Is because if you experiment on an unvalidated conversion rate approach and you're paying for it through either Google or Bing or even LinkedIn or Facebook, it's just too costly. The learning process is just too costly. And imagine we're talking about the US here or the UK where you have the highest cost per clicks, one of the highest cost per clicks in the world. So it can go up to $20 or 15 pounds per click, which is just crazy. Uh, and to make the most out of it, I would always say, go to your competitor, especially the top one, see how they're converting, copy it, and start the experimentation on that one, not on yours, because they have validated it, they have traffic, they have a reason why they're keeping it. Maybe they're wrong, but the chances of them being right is higher than you being right without traffic.
Yeah. Definitely. Definitely. So use competitor analysis and
Yeah,
competitor research to give yourself a head start.
absolutely. Absolutely. It saves thousands of dollars. Like it's crazy. Like it's so good and it just saves a lot of money, to be honest. Like a
Yeah.
lot of money.
Yeah. That's a great strategy. And and do you, do you have a paid ads platform which you find performs the best for B2B? Do you find LinkedIn ads work well? Google ads, do they work better for you? Facebook
I
ads that
believe
work for B2B?
I believe LinkedIn ads are nice, but I would still prefer Google, just the level of options that you have there and the data, especially if you know how to read the data. I think Google wins. For example, you can do tests on all sorts of things. I mean, LinkedIn is nice. It's kind of expensive. Now, if you ask me, mid-sized businesses, especially those that are not in SaaS, LinkedIn should not even be an option, to be honest. I see LinkedIn primarily for e-commerce and SaaS and nothing else. Now, yes, you can market your services. No one is saying that. I would not advise that because it doesn't have a good ROI. Google, on the other hand, is just perfect, especially if you know how to use it. For example, you can test eCPC versus CPA model. You can test different copies. You can go for responsive search ads and you can pin them. And then all of that data will be available in like an instant after 5,000 impressions only. And you can imagine 5,000 impressions with an average CTR of, let's say, 10%. It's not going to cost a lot of money to get early insight into what's working or not. I don't see that remotely possible with LinkedIn. I mean, Facebook is maybe cheaper, but the intent is not there. Like for Facebook, you're disrupting the user experience, same like you do with LinkedIn. And you're trying to sell something to someone who is low key, a little bit pissed kind of. Facebook, Google, on the other hand, paid ads, the intent is very high. So they're searching for a solution. And you only need to do is that you don't mess up the landing page. And then you kind of have a winner. Now, how do you don't mess up the landing page? I would say two things. First, run an experiment on the optimization model, eCPC versus CPA. And I would also advise to not run CPA optimization if you don't have the data in Google Ads, or if you're starting new, or if your ad account is new. Then go for eCPC till you build the data a little bit. If you do have it, I would run that experiment immediately, do a competitor analysis, copy their conversion model, meaning how they convert to whatever we want them covered, whether that's a call or getting their lead, and immediately go to an A/B platform, something that's free. For example, Growthbook could be a good example, or VWO could be, but that one is not free though. Or use Unbound just to test landing page and immediately start the experimentation process. And what I've also noticed that the common mistake is that once you pay for ads, you must have an A/B running because that's not free traffic. You got to get the most out of it. So
Yeah,
yeah, that's what.
absolutely, absolutely. Great. Okay. We're coming towards the end of the interview. But I was going to ask you some more informal questions, if you don't mind,
Of course, no,
just
not at
that
all.
we can just see the more about the man and what your interests are. So, well, the first question is, what sort of music do you listen to, either when you're working or when you finish work and just chilling out?
When I'm working, only classical. I love Chopin and Tchaikovsky are my favorites. I
Yeah.
also love, uh, I would say Shostakovich a little bit, but
Wow.
mostly Chopin and Tchaikovsky. And after that, I'm like 80s and 90s rock primarily. That's my that's my music. It's and nothing else pretty much. I'm like a old fashioned 29-year-old, but I love 80s and 90s music, to be honest.
Yeah. No, that sounds great. And impressed with the classical music because some of that's quite intense, isn't it?
Chopin is not a lot. Yeah,
Not
I
so much
mean
Chopin, but
Beethoven is kind of intense, and Mozart is intense. I mean
Tchaikovsky. Yeah.
Tchaikovsky is more like laid back a little bit, not all, but or maybe I don't understand enough. That also could be an option. At least that's how it appears to me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I must admit, I'm not an expert on classical music. You're probably
Well,
right.
me neither.
Uh, and when you go to a restaurant or or bring some food in the house, what sort of food do you like? Does Macedonia, for example, have a particular type of food? Is it similar to Greek, or is it?
Yes. Yeah, but well, primarily we all share a common cuisine because of the Ottoman influence for 500 years, and we kind of all share similarities in the cuisine. We tend to call pretty much most of the Macedonian cuisine kind of gets their like has roots from the Turkish cuisine.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's the most honest answer, but there are some stuff that I don't think they're available anywhere else. But I would go with the classics. I really love, I would say, chicken and soups and pretty much, and I love Mexican food, to be honest.
Ah,
That's one of I say those two are my favorites: chicken and Mexican food.
great, great. And when you're reading, if you're reading, whether it's a audio book or an
Yeah.
actual book, do you have any favorite book, particularly a book that's to do with marketing or self-help?
It's a very good question. Actually, I'm reading a lot to a point that I'm not sure if I have. I mean, uh, in terms of self help, I could say that I always kind of like Eckhart Tolle. In economics, I'm more of a Milton Friedman, Thomas Sowell person. I love them. Um, I would say in terms of marketing, I to be honest, I never read books about marketing. I always love to do the either articles or try it and learn while doing. I never, because marketing is changing so rapidly that if you take a book from last year, it's
Okay.
old even.
It's,
It's dated. So I would say for marketing, I never bought books regarding market. I have a few here in my house, but they're not my favorites. There's some sales books, for example, from Brian Tracy and so on, but not, I would say, not my favorites. I prefer about economics and social critic kind of books in my spare time.
got it. Yeah. So if someone wants to use your services, what is the best way to contact you? And also, what services do you have available?
Uh, Primarily by email. I mean, the services I can provide consulting services that I would say, because I'm currently, as you know, the CMO of two companies, so not like I have a lot of spare time. But consulting is definitely the service that I can provide and do a thorough analysis. Now, that's one thing that I do, and by email, I guess.
Yeah. And you've got a LinkedIn profile.
Yeah, yeah, as well. Yeah, that's the point. Forgot about that. Yes, absolutely.
So we can contact you through there too.
Yep.
Brilliant. Thanks, Emir. You've been a great guest. And
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for the invite. It's been a pleasure, to be honest.
yeah, yeah. And I hope people who watch this interview do go all the way through, because you did give some real nuggets during this
I,
interview.
I hope so. I really wish them the best. I know how challenging it can get, but as long as, I mean, they can pull it through. I mean, it is definitely possible. So
Yes. So that's a lesson. Make sure you watch all the way through, because you will get some real nuggets of information from an expert.
thank you again for the invite, Mike. It was a
That's all
pleasure.
right. That's all right. Have a good day.
Have a good day. Bye.